Hey everyone, welcome back to another Executive Table Talk. My name is JT O'Donnell, founder and CEO of Work It Daily and the host of today's show. And you know, each and every week I bring a slate of executive experts here to talk about things that are going on that you need to know about. And today we're going to talk about change in an organization, particularly managing change in an organization. I don't know a single organization right now that isn't going through some sort of change, especially post-pandemic. So I think this is a hot topic that a lot of people are trying to wrap their heads around. And so with that in mind, I want to bring my rock stars up here today. Hello, executives. How are we all doing today?
Good. Thank
Good
you.
to have you here. All right. So we're going to start with Lisa. Lisa, global marketing manager, digital manager. You know, you've worked in large organizations. You're seeing change across the board. What's your take on this? How do you manage change effectively?
Oh, thanks,
Can you
JT.
manage change effectively?
Yeah, exactly. Well, as we all know, change is inevitable in today's fast-paced world, and organizations must embrace it in order to stay competitive and relevant. As a brand marketer, I've played a crucial role in change management and its successful implementation with Fortune 100 companies and emerging growth startups. And here are 5 strategies that have benefited me in helping companies manage the complexities of change management. And so the first thing, develop a strategy before you embark on any change initiative, aligning you and your team around the organizational's vision. This provides a purpose that you can all rally around. The second thing you want to do is you want to empower you and involve your employees. Change is not a one-person show. It is a collective effort. So you want to empower you and your employees through the change process. You want to provide them with the tools and knowledge so that they can make their own decisions. And here's something, a nugget that I want to encourage you to write down right now. Change is when the employee feels valued and they feel a part of the decision-making process, they will drive change throughout the organization. And you want to also make sure that you're fostering that collaboration, because when you do, employees will embrace the new methods of working. The third thing, which leads me to, you want to establish priorities and you want to gain alignment. Change creates multiple moving parts and competing priorities. So when you want to do a successful implementation, I suggest that you ruthlessly prioritize and you gain alignment, and then you regularly track that progress so that you can achieve those business results, which also drives into monitoring progress and celebrating those milestones. So change is a journey and it's not going to happen overnight. So you want to establish key KPIs, key business indicators, so that you can measure that change. And then when you hit those milestones, you want to celebrate that achievement, that effort that your individuals and the team make. Positive reinforcement reinforces the idea that change brings progress and encourages further engagement from everybody. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing, which I saved for last because it is the most important, lead by example. Your actions speak louder than words. So embrace the new processes, the technologies, the strategies. Be enthusiastic and optimistic. Your behavior and your attitude can drive and inspire others to follow suit. So just remember, change starts with you. Embrace change as an opportunity for you and your organization to thrive in this constantly changing business world that we're in.
I love that, Lisa. And I love that you're emphasizing the fact that it starts with us, right? You know, if they don't see us being very positive about change, embracing it, pushing for it, then they're not going to do it. And that's such a key element that I've seen. I've seen executives be hypocritical, right? They're telling everyone to embrace change, but then, under their breath, they're complaining about something involved in the change, so wonderful, wonderful advice. Michael, I'm going to bounce down to you. You come from that amazing background, finance operations, spent a lot of time in the NFL. What are your thoughts on the way that we can make change work in the workplace?
Thank you, JT. I really love this topic about change because it's something that we just can't get around, whether it's change. As leaders, we have to be able to manage change, manage risk. We have to be able to embrace it. And because people are watching us to be the leaders and take the lead on this. Working at the NFL for 22 and a half years, I see management going about change in two different ways. So I'll give you two different scenarios. Scenario one is sometimes C-suite level executives will need to change direction to fit a new business model and develop a new way to go. So as a result of that new business model, sometimes the executives will realize they need to get a new executive level position, create a new position to oversee this company pivot. The hire will be sworn to secrecy as a job goes in different direction without immediately giving all the details to the staff. Further instructions might be to terminate anyone resistant of the change. This is a way of company to eliminate team members who want to keep everything the same. New hires are less reluctant to change and aren't connected to the past. So that's scenario one. Scenario two, this is the way we expect the change to happen. The leader makes a plan. Before bringing a proposed change to the team, he must ensure that the plan covers the who, why, when, where, on a timeline to keep the project in focus. So that is something that a plan needs to be in place first. Then transparency. As the company changes and unfolds, sometimes planning might have to remain private, but everything else is open to questions and answers. Discuss what needs to be discussed, explain the truth, and have the vision of the company plan. Also, tell the truth. I just mentioned truth. The leader needs to tell the truth when there is negative feedback and they need to show the long-term vision and the doubt. So you must keep the group together in a positive way and let you know there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be chatter. And the next thing is communicate. Keep the lines of communication open and let your team know what's going on. Allow them to ask questions. Make the employee feel part of the process. And the next thing is to provide training and testing. Before you launch or implement change, allow hands-on training and allow mock testing periods. Invite participants to feedback. And also don't expect success to happen quickly. There's going to be failures. There's going to be ups and downs. Figure out what works and what doesn't work. And lastly is leadership. This is where we as leaders show our skills and need to be front and center. This is your test. This is your responsibility. Everything good or bad, what works, doesn't work, it relies on you. You own it. And create a good plan. Did you create a good plan? Did you explain it right? Execute it right? You as a leader take all responsibility for what works and what doesn't work and the way things go. Thank you.
Love it. Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things that you talked about, Michael, that a lot of people don't talk about is that sometimes the change has to happen at the higher level first and everybody doesn't know about it. So that when that comes out, there's a reaction to it. Why weren't we included? Why didn't we get a say in this? And that's where, start of that pushback starts to occur. So I really like that you talked about the honesty around that, trying to explain why it had to happen that way. And then I especially love that you ended with, no matter how it turns out, if you're the leader, own it, right?
Yeah,
You've got to own
right.
it.
That's right.
Really, really valuable feedback. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Talking about things not always going the way, Catherine, you come from the music industry, and I think you've got a lot to talk about on this topic about, that it doesn't always go the way you hope. So what are your thoughts here on change, especially in the music industry?
Thanks, JT. I had a boss one time that gave me some really good advice early on in my career. And she said, if you're willing to put an idea out there that might affect financials of business units or work-life balance, are you willing to lose your job over that idea? Now, that isn't particularly literally true. I wasn't going to lose my job, but it definitely was a wake-up call to how important it is to manage change, especially the messaging when you're in a creative industry like the music industry. So I really took her words to heart with anything moving forward from a management perspective when I was presenting change. We all wish and hope for that happy ending at the end of the day. And when it comes to bringing change, the reality is sometimes, in my observations, that when you're working with business units that are making money financially, that they're prospering, sometimes the successful executives do not want to put out any negative professional capital in and around them, or they do not want drama to be in and around them. So to Michael's point with the NFL, amazing. They brought out an outside agent or change manager to come in and handle the messaging. But just like Lisa said, sometimes organizations really need to listen to their employees and also value their input. And so in the creative field, especially having, from my observations inside record labels, it really seems to be a value to listen to the stakeholders and to try to get their creative thoughts and value their opinions. A couple of tips that I've seen some executives do that I really have loved watching execute is that choosing someone that has been at the organization for a long time, that's confident enough to deliver the messaging. Personalize and look at the feedback. Stakeholders have internal and external motivations, right? Is this going to affect their work-life balance? Is this going to affect, their pocketbook? And so really getting their feedback before the messaging is rolled out is really important to me personally. My management style is a kind, caring, and respectful style of management. And I honestly couldn't go to bed at night knowing that I didn't fully support a change that was coming down from management. And I have left companies over this. So it's really important for me that I align with that culture and that my teammates and that everyone on all the cross-functional teams I work with are valued. So that's an important principle for me that I have to align with. But also creating that culture where bringing up ideas and taking a risk is welcomed, like it's cheered in meetings. That type of a culture is very inclusive, and it speaks highly to Gen Z and millennials, that next group that's coming into the workplace that I think a lot of executives really need to pay attention to from a leadership standpoint. But really at the very top of this is respect. Respect is earned and it takes time. And just like Lisa said, you want a leader and an executive that you can trust and that can initiate. So a couple tips to do that in creative environments that I've seen is making sure that the leader is confident and has the courage to stand behind the change. Take time to listen to the feedback and to seriously consider it. Create that culture that provides an opportunity for employees to speak up and voice their opinions and respect, and value their opinions, and actually initiate those values so the employees can see that and they really buy into the change and they support it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that information. I like the fact that you're taking a strong stance on that idea that, if you can't get behind it, then you probably shouldn't stick around because you're not going to be a positive influencer of the change. I think we have to own that instead of, saying, well, they made the change and so I'm just going to stay here and make everyone's life miserable. If you can't embrace it.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I mean, I've seen so many cool cultures as a contractor that I know it's out there. It exists, and you can align in an amazing environment like that with great leadership.
Yeah, most definitely. Great stuff. So also in a different industry, John, you come from a massive background in the education field. I think you've seen the ups and downs, successes and failures of change within that field. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure, definitely. So as you were saying, JT, if there's one thing that, and this is going to sound trite, but it's true, constant in education is change. This initiative is in, this initiative is out, this one's in, this one's out. So in my career, I've had to deal with change a lot, and sometimes those changes have gone well, and sometimes they haven't gone well. Even when I and others in the organizations I was working in did exactly what Lisa was saying, did exactly what Michael was saying, and what Catherine was saying, investing their people or vesting our people in that change process. But taking it from a different lens, and Michael brought this up when he was talking about one scenario being that often organizations bring in someone from the outside to lead that change, partially because they might have different skills or new skills. And I think it was Lisa was mentioning that sometimes organizations need change to survive. However, one of the elephants in the room is an organization might need change to survive, but people generally don't like change. So if I'm not the CEO, let's say I'm a high executive, but I'm not the leader, the top leader in an organization, whether that's a CEO or a superintendent in a school district. As Catherine was saying, I really liked how Catherine mentioned how her boss had told her, you know, if you're going to lead a change process, you need to be willing to lose your job over that. I almost think I want to turn that question around and ask the person hiring me, are you willing to lose your job over this as well? Because the change processes that have worked well, particularly when hiring new talent to lead that change, tend to be the change processes where the very top of the organization has the back of the person leading the change, that they're not going to run and hide when challenges come. As Michael mentioned, there's chatter. There's always going to be chatter. So rather than waiting for challenges to the change process to occur, I think it would behoove people who are interested in leading change processes to talk to other senior leaders about, you know, how do we stand together? How do we support one another while supporting those subordinates under us to make this change? So that's one comment I would have. And then the other aspect about the change process, again, whether it's in education, music, or any of the other fields that we are representing here today, yes, I think the more we vest people in a change process, the more we involve them in those decisions, the more effective a change process is going to be, because people are going to be vested in that change process. But the other elephant is there are just going to be times when people are not interested in the change. And as an organization, the organization needs to decide what to do with these folks. Now, hopefully there could be retraining and the person will get on board when there's less fear of that change. But let's say they still don't want to change, that they're really happy doing what they're doing X and you need Y. So then I think it does become a question of how to let those people find other opportunities in their career that best suit them, but in a way that has humanity, that shows your compassion for those individuals, that actually encourages those individuals, even if it means getting on the phone and calling one of your contacts and saying, hey, this person's not great for me, but they could be great, or not great for me, but this person wants to take their career in a different direction. I think you and your company are doing XYZ that would really benefit them and benefit you at the same time. So, and I think it was Lisa who was mentioning that actions speak louder than words. So actions speak louder when things are going well as when there are challenges. So those are just two things that I would bring up as elephants in the change process that we should be cognizant of and thinking about.
JT, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, what a rookie move, everyone. You'd think I'd get it right by now with the microphone. I love, John, that you talked about the fact that if you're being hired as the agent of change, make sure the people that are hiring you are willing to lose their job over it, that they're fully committed to the change. Because to your point, I have seen so many times where someone's brought in to impact the change, but the reality is nobody's really buying it. Right. So a better way to make it bomb than to bring someone in and be able to make a scapegoat, right? And say they're the one that didn't make it work. It's fascinating to me. So people really need to be careful of that. I love it.
And it's happened to me, JT, in my career too. So I speak from the heart and from experience there, definitely. Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, great. Lisa, you have a comment?
I just wanted to say one other thing to follow up on what Catherine had said about this kind of resistance that you might encounter throughout the organization, right? Whether it be an employee that works with you or somebody, your peer, or even up above. And I think we need to address that. We need to address that head on and right away by saying, you know, this is what's happening. This has been established. And, you know, let's have a conversation. And if this resistance is really strong, then to Catherine's point, that they may not be a fit. And we need to say, you know, maybe this is not the place for you. And maybe you need to spend some time thinking about it, and deciding whether this is the company going forward or not. And deciding that, and coming back and deciding whether you want to continue on. Now, if it's somebody up above and it continues on, then I think it's a decision for the employees to say, okay, this needs to be raised up, because if the organization has made this decision, then it's up to employees to say, hey, there's an issue. You guys need to deal with this, because the organization has made this commitment. But resistance to change really needs to be addressed right away if the organization has made this commitment.
Yeah, I love it. No, it's an absolute great point. We've seen far too many times where they've allowed people, maybe because they've been with the company a long time, to stay on and voice that negativity. And there's just no room for that at that point. If you want the change to be impacted, as you've all spoken about today, people need to be rowing in the same direction. We've got some really cool questions today. So the first question that I want to grab, executives, is from Curtis Lean. And she's asking, what if it's the leadership that's the most opposed to change? So the way I take that and frame that is, what if, you know, the team itself, you know, are saying, look, something has to change, you know, something's going wrong, we need to fix this, but leadership's not listening. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Thoughts on that? Throw your hand up there. Who wants to go first? Oh, thank you, Michael.
Yes, I mean, I think we talked about this in the beginning, that, you know, if the leaders aren't on board, it's going to be very difficult to get the rest of the staff on board with the change, because if the negativity is coming from the top, I don't know. That's a very you know, bad recipe for success if it's coming from leadership. And again, that's why I said sometimes the organization will get a new leader at the top to make this change, because it depends on how fast. Sometimes organizations things are happening fast and things are moving fast, and they don't have time to get bogged down in negativity or someone who doesn't want to change. And for some organizations, it's human capital. They know that if you don't want to do it, there's a line outside the door of 10 or 15 other people that will.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Who wants to add to that? John?
Yes, I was just going to add to what Michael was saying. You know, if, you know, and what Ms. Bass is asking, you know, if leadership isn't open to listening to change, and that change is good or potentially good change, the organization will fail. So, you know, that's what happens. That's the consequence if leadership doesn't listen. Now, I'm encouraged, at least in my field, we see the concept of distributive leadership happening more in organizations where there is a systemic mechanism for comments below to come up. And there is more of an interest in training leaders, particularly in schools, to be receptive to listening to those calls for change, not just from teachers, but from parents, from students. And so I'm encouraged in my field that even when new leaders come on board or someone moves to a higher leadership role, that more school organizations are investing in leadership coaching and bringing folks in to talk about the importance of distributive leadership, communication skills. So I almost wonder if that could also be a tactic that other organizations use to make sure that we're also developing a cadre of leaders who are interested in change. So we talk about staff members maybe not being on the right seats in the bus. We also have to talk about our leaders as well.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Lisa?
I think that if the organization has provided feedback and has bubbled up this issue to leadership, and leadership's not willing to listen, then you're going to find that organization failing, and that leader ultimately being pushed out at some point. But it's going to take a failureship of the organization. And I've seen it many times. I've seen bankruptcy. I've seen CEOs pushed out when there's years and years of failure because a leader at the top is not listening. And when you have that and they're not going to listen to the organization, you just wait it out. And that's unfortunate. But those leaders that actually will listen to the organization and the feedback that they're getting, they will make the change. But sometimes you don't have that, and you either have to make the decision like, I've got to leave and go somewhere because the writing's on the wall. But if the person at the top is not going to listen, what are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. It's a great discussion and topic. Now we have the flip side, and I really want to make sure we make time for this question and have you all weigh in on this. So a LinkedIn user is saying, how do you deal with the constant change? I think it's hard for employees to buy into change when change is happening every 6 months, depending on a new idea or new executive hire. What are you seeing with leaders managing change and sticking with that change to see if it actually makes the company better before moving on to the next idea? This is something that I have seen happen in organizations, and it's, like every day there's something new that they're going in, and it's exhausting mentally and physically to the staff. Any thoughts on that? Catherine, I'll throw it your way first.
Yeah, I would, in my industry, we could see that with platforms that are hosting artists independently, putting out music, and then having direct record deals signed off of those platforms. And we saw a big rush of that 3 years ago, and it's still here. So sometimes those changes do work, and they do present a broader distribution channel for, in my case, music artists. So they are good. But when they're coming at you as constant as they are as new tech or new platforms, I once was on an email thread that really talked about another company trying to do the same thing as TikTok internally. And they're still trying, they're still working at it. So I say, give it a chance, try to manage it, try to be open to the new ideas. As much as I don't want to be open to AI, I know it's here. I know it's affecting the music industry. So I'm learning everything I can. So I guess I say any education and research that you can do on each of the topics, just privately, just to give yourself a little bit of balance and getting your sea legs under all these ideas that are coming at you might be really helpful in conversations moving forward. If you have that research and you understand the risks and maybe the payoffs for each of these new ideas, and you have that internally, that might give you a little more confidence and courage to tolerate some of these new, effects coming at you.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely.
Yes.
John?
Yeah, I was just going to add, when one is coming on, let's say one's coming from another organization to take on this change leadership, or even if someone's in the company already and in a new role, I think the first question that should be asked is change necessary? So even though many people like to come in and put their stamp, so to speak, on an organization, the organization might not need that, right? So we talked about organizational desires, goals, and interests, and individual interests. So if we're truly interested in what is in the best interest of the organization, I think, one, we have to know when we're doing change initiatives if they're really necessary, and how robust those changes should be. And then whether someone's new or not new coming into an organization to lead change, is there a strategic plan? And are we going back to the strategic plan, whether that's a 6-month, year, 3-year plan? And is the proposed change going to make us smarter, faster, better in achieving whatever the goals are on our strategic plan? Because if they're not, if we can't make that connection, then we have to ask if that constant change is necessary.
Yeah, great comments. Lisa, I see you nodding. Jump in there.
I think they both hit the nail on the head, both Catherine and John. In my world of marketing, people love to come in and put their stamp on things all the time. So change is constantly happening. But you take a look at big companies like Nike, Just Do It, M&M, melt in your mouth, not in your hands. Those are taglines that've been around for 3 decades. And yet you have companies constantly changing their taglines and their packaging, and because brand marketers want to come in and put their stamp on it. And then you have all these new technologies and things that are coming in. And just as Catherine said, you want the data, you want the analytics, you want the research, you want to use that information to back it up, to say why Why do we have to change? Let's look at what we're doing well, where our strengths are, where our advantages from the competition. What is our long-term strategy? Just as John said, what is our strategy? What are we trying to achieve? And where can we test? Where can we use new things? What's the balance in all of this where we can use new things and test, but where are our strengths and where do we leverage that and not upset the cart and drive our long-term initiative? So you've got to balance all of that and make sure you're educating people who are coming in new to the organization. And it's a balancing act, all of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Michael?
Yes, I agree with Lisa, what she just said at the end about educating the staff. And that's the point I wanted to make. I think education from the top and filtering down to the staff level, sometimes one size doesn't fit all. You gotta let people realize and know why we're changing. There's competitors out there. The industry is changing. And just like anything else in this world, it's just constantly changing. And people have to get used to that and get adjusted to this changes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I just want to bring up a shout out to Tyler. Tyler said, finding a way to make the business case for the change can bring better visibility to leadership in promoting a change, which I think is absolutely true. And a great reminder to everybody listening today, if you are the one that wants to try to make change happen in your organization, you are going to have to make the business case to leadership in order to get that buy-in. We are seeing a lot of questions. I want to take one more. Execs, if you can all stay on for a few more minutes, I want to run over because there's so many good questions today and we're not going to get to them all. But Ruben posted something and I want to hit on this. Ruben said, I know when I recognize when they're stuck in their subconscious programming, right? So I can see an employee who is stuck and can't get past the change, but I haven't been that successful in getting themselves to pull themselves out of it. Right? How can I influence them better? So, John, I'm going to pick on you first. As an educator, you're all about having to shift people's mindsets. What's a tip you might be able to shoot Ruben with this?
Sure. So I do a lot of coaching of teachers in my field. And one of the questions I ask when this happens is, asking, is there something, what are you afraid of about this change? Let's talk about what can go wrong. So by asking that question, you surface what they actually might be afraid of. And that could give you one avenue or one way in which to say, well, let's think about that. Could that really happen? So it's almost like catastrophizing. I mean, we talk about that in a psychology sense, about the future and anxiety, and people who catastrophize tend to be more anxious. You could even look at that in terms of a business perspective, right? So let's surface your fears. And once we surface them, then I, as the leader, can hopefully address those fears and show you how either A, that's not going to happen, or if it is a real threat, what we could do to mitigate those problems. Another way I like to look at it is ask them, well, what could be the success in making this change? What do you ultimately want? What does success look like for you? What makes you happy at the end of the day in the work that you do? And there again, getting them to forecast a positive future and then figuring out how you can work with them to show them how the change can actually make them achieve what they want to achieve faster, better, more intellectually. I think those are some strategies that might work here.
Love it.
And
Lisa, I see you nodding.
I would just add that I love exactly what John said. And then once you've got that information from them, put together an action plan with measurable KPIs so that you can then just start to show them what they're doing is having an effect on the organization and they're making results so that they can get over that hurdle.
Yeah,
exactly.
I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I think that also kind of speaks to something that Ahmed has asked, which is how can organizations ensure that the change is sustained over long term and becomes embedded in the culture? And I think what I heard all of you talk about today is this idea of measuring, providing feedback, showing people and demonstrating that it's there, right? It's so that eventually we are, unconsciously at that next level when you think about that evolution. Truly fascinating today, executives. Amazing job. Team, I am sorry that we haven't been able to answer all the questions, but you're coming with some great ones. So promise me, first thing I want you to do right now, do you see these executives? They're all experts in their space. They're here on LinkedIn, dropping all sorts of amazing wisdom. Find them, follow them, put their names down right now. Better yet, reach out to them, send a custom connection request and say, hey, I saw you on ETT by Work It Daily. I would love to connect. I'm sure they'll connect back with you. But most importantly, if they resonated with you today and you have any follow-up questions, you should hit them up for that as well, because they truly all are amazing at what they do. So executives, thank you for another valuable executive table talk. To all my friends out there, remember what I tell you. If you want to win, you've got to work it daily. So come back and see us soon, okay? Bye-bye, everyone.